Jaron Boots Ennis is currently 35-0, 31 knockouts in the prime of his career and coming off a short, destructive performance.
There's a straight shot. I thought Woody got caught by Ennis.
Beautiful uppercut.
He got dropped in round number 1. Lima's been hit by a Philadelphia freight train. He seems to think so, and he's just done it. Round 1, destruction.
Vergil Ortiz Jr. is 24-0, 22 knockouts in the prime of his career and also coming off a short, destructive performance.
Is he trying to rope-a-dope here, Sergio? What do you think he's thinking? Oh, he's hurt! He's out on his feet! Vergil Ortiz, just like that! Sensational from Ortiz, and Boots can do nothing but smile! Is he next?
They're both in the same division. Boots is 28, Ortiz is 27. They're both undefeated, neither hold titles. So there's plenty of reason to suggest it's the best fight to make in boxing. If it's not Boots versus Ortiz, it's definitely Inoue versus Junso Nakatani. I would say that is a higher level fight in terms of where both fighters are right now, but I can't help but feel Boots versus Ortiz is the most exciting matchup that can be made right now. Vergil Ortiz, on the other hand, was given a much more difficult test earlier into his career, facing Mean Machine Egidius Kavaliauskas, to this day still the only man to drop Terence Crawford.
Good shot there, right uppercut by Kavaliauskas.
Kavaliauskas and Ortiz's legs are quite right as he holds on. Ortiz Jr. looked down at the canvas for a second. He may be in trouble here. Kavaliauskas.
Ortiz hurts Kavaliauskas to the body now.
To this second round, Ortiz just getting more angry.
In a direct response to being hurt badly by Kavaliauskas, Ortiz hurts him back, as if getting hurt just made him angry, as Mean Machine's momentum is stifled by a left hook to the body.
Behind the jab, but that's the thing about Kavaliauskas.
And a single round later, Kavaliauskas is down on the canvas. What this essentially meant for Ortiz is that he's already passed the test for a prospect. Everyone questions how a prospect does in the face of adversity when they haven't faced it before, as Ortiz goes on to drop Kavaliauskas 3 more times on his way to a knockout victory in the 8th round.
Race Kavaliauskas once and for all, and he's done it! Drops again! Number 18!
The Punisher is back in Grand Prairie. This is
But it's not just Ortiz who seems to thrive in chaos. In fact, under pressure is where Jaron Ennis seems to do his best work offensively.
Roy Montvilla in his last fight, and Villa is a good puncher, basically a punching bag in that fight.
And right now, beautiful combinations by Boots Ennis. I mean, he's already thinking about counters.
I don't know if he saw me recording it, but he took a smile.
Sneaky right hand, but Avanesian likes to throw in between the shots. It seems Avanesian's going to be punching in between the shots of Boots. He has no choice but to.
Lower left side of David Avanesian, already red from the number of shots. Shakiness.
I wouldn't say that. I just think this man loves to fight.
Oh, another right to the body.
But look, the thing about Boots is he's staying in there.
Oh no, was that a knockdown?
That was a brutal shot.
Really surprised that Avanesian hasn't taken a knee for these body shots.
In perhaps his most violent fight to date, Boots took on David Avanesian last year. It was not a technical fight by any means, they just stood in front of each other and slugged it out until they figured out who was going to fall first. And Avanesian's corner was forced to stop it in between rounds. There's a lot of parallels to be made between Boots and Ortiz. Age, weight, talent, career trajectories right now, power. The only question is, are they willing to face each other?
We're ready for the best. We want to fight the best. Boots, come over here. I think this is the fight that has to happen, man. I think this is it.
It's the best fight in boxing. I think he did a great job. He looked good. They've been talking all crazy. They've been talking crazy. I'm going to back it up, and I'm going to show the world why I'm the best in the world.
I don't want to take your money away, bro. I'm not betting.
You ain't going to take nothing.
Nah.
You ain't going to take nothing. When we fight, I guarantee you, I'm going to win.
Don't make any promises you can't keep, bro.
I'm going to make every promise, and I'm going to keep it.
While a post-fight interview is never confirmation of a fight happening, the fighters themselves definitely seem up for it. It may simply come down to promoters, contract disputes, and whether a certain Saudi Arabian man is willing to chip in. With all the promo out of the way, who do I actually think wins this fight? I think an interesting place to start would be looking at the worst of each fighter. The worst performance of Ennis' career so far would have to be the rematch versus Karen Shikadzian exactly a year ago today. There's not really any common opponents between Boots and Ortiz that we can compare. There's one boxer that both have faced, Thomas Delorme, both of which ended in knockouts in the first round. So all we can really go off of is their performances against their respective competition. For context, the first fight between Boots and Chikadze was a 12-round decision, almost a shutout. A dominant win, but Boots didn't really assert himself, and he was expected to come through with a victory by knockout in that fight. So the justification behind doing the rematch was that Ennis would get the knockout, rectify that wrong, ensure that he has improved since January 2023. But what appeared to happen in the second fight was that Chikadze, building off the confidence he had in going the distance in the first fight, was a lot more confident. Instead of being as negative as possible as he did in the first fight, Chikadze made an effort to be as difficult and as tricky as possible. Despite what the scorecards may say, Chikadze won 4 to 5 rounds of that fight, and Ennis was clearly having difficulty navigating such a difficult opponent. His footwork was impossible to read, his shot selection was impossible to read, he was constantly moving and shifting between different distances throughout the fight. He maintained his counter-punching ability to keep Boots honest, and he was not intimidated by Boots' power whatsoever. All those things combined are a textbook recipe for a shaky performance in a young fighter's career. Keeping in mind Boots was as big as a 1 in 35 favourite to win this fight. The same odds he had for his most recent opponent, Wisma Lima. The shakiest performance in Vergil Ortiz's case is the fight versus Sergey Bohachuk. Now while Chikadze gave Boots problems as a result of his awkwardness, the issues Bohachuk posed for Ortiz were a result of his presence and his relentless activity. Vergil Ortiz is an actual pressure fighter, and he's also used to blowing people away in the first few power punches he lands. So when for the first time he's not only pressured, but also failing to put a dent in his opponents, all the while his opponent is throwing more than he is, Ortiz was bound to have a difficult fight in this case. It's a fight he would ultimately pull through sheer will. He was landing clean shots throughout, but that was after 2 knockdowns suffered, and Bohachuk was very close to getting the nod. Now, to be clear, I don't believe the Chikadze or Bohachuk fights have any bearing on the Boots versus Ortiz fight, in terms of they're likely to play out the same way because of styles. Boots is nothing like Sergey Bohachuk, and Ortiz is nothing like Karen Chikadze. But both fights did show general shortcomings. Both the first and the second Chikadze fights from Boots showed his inability to adjust mid-fight. Boots is normally such an athletic and overwhelming physical force. He found he wasn't levels above in the boxing, or levels above physically. He couldn't simply muscle around Chikadze, so he was low on answers. He certainly tried to outmuscle Chikadze throughout the fight, but Chikadze was too tricky to let it happen. Although Chikadze did suffer a knockdown in that fight. And along with that, similar defensive issues we've seen from Boots his entire career so far. Now in terms of Bohachuk versus Ortiz, I don't think Ortiz did much inherently wrong the same way Ennis did. He tried boxing on the back foot initially and got dropped as a result in the first round. So all he really could do was meet Bohachuk head on and try and outwork him from there. The issue is his durability wasn't entirely holding up in that fight. While they were flash knockdowns that Ortiz recovered from very well, those are real knockdowns and they do score points. I'm not so bothered about the first knockdown but rather the second one. Catching Ortiz with a counter like this is exactly what Boots is going to be looking for. Boots is sharper, faster and more powerful than Bohachuk is. So Ortiz has to be as defensively sound as he possibly can while coming in. Now let's turn the conversation more positively. What's the best performance from both fighters? In Boots' case, I think it was the unification fight between him and Stanionis. His best opponent to date is only reigning champion on his record. Stanionis was quite tailor-made stylistically for Boots, and it definitely showed in the fight. Boots showed us what he's best at, counter-punching off the back foot. Over the course of 6 rounds, his footwork was on point, his counters were on point, his shock selection was on point, and he absolutely took advantage of the way Stanionis squares up in his stance. It was a counter and move session until the end of the 6th round, where Stanionis starts taking backward steps. Stanionis had been hit one too many times, and his body was not able to keep up, as he eventually crumbled to the canvas and his corner was forced to step in between rounds, marking Boots' first unification and his last fight at 147. The best performance for Vergil Ortiz, in my opinion, was the Israel Madrimov fight. Obviously there's far more destructive performances on his record, more knockouts, but in terms of boxing ability shown versus a high-level opponent, the Madrimov fight is the one. Madrimov is definitely the best opponent between Boots and Ortiz, and I actually have my doubts that Boots would be able to beat Madrimov. I think Vergil, being a pressure fighter, is more suited to facing an amateur style like Madrimov. I actually picked Madrimov to win this fight at the time. I thought Ortiz had the tools to do it, but I thought he was a bit too calculated for his own good. I thought he may be too reluctant and may second guess himself too much to be able to effectively pressure Madrimov and stifle his offense. But as it turned out, Ortiz showed a perfect blend of aggression and calculation. Technical boxing is often associated with being on the back foot with a jab, but what Ortiz showed was an incredible display of technical aggression. His jab has always been really good for a pressure fighter, but it's his footwork that I think has made the difference in recent years. Ortiz in some ways is similar to Gennady Golovkin in the way he cuts off the ring without actually throwing any punches. Just sheer presence, footwork and the occasional lead hand work, not to mention maintaining a high, tight defense. Ortiz had the perfect game plan to deal with Madrimov, and he won as a result. And Ortiz was definitely building off the form he showed versus Madrimov in his next fight versus Lubin last night. Erickson Lubin isn't as tricky in terms of footwork or defense compared to Madrimov, but he is a world level fighter and a potential tricky matchup for Ortiz. Ortiz showed impeccable ability to cut off the ring. His work while Lubin was on the ropes was as good as we've ever seen it, making sure he used his weight to keep Lubin on the ropes and then breaking to throw shots, all the while maintaining his high guard in between, making sure he was prepared to catch and throw and discouraging Lubin from countering, so that he could then work under Lubin's guard to the body and around it to the side of the head. He busts through Lubin's guard 3 times in a row with a right hook, and he eventually goes out on his feet. And the fight is over in the second round. So we've established Ennis is at his best on the back foot, and Ortiz is at his best on the front foot. Ortiz is likely the one to be coming forwards, so whose style is favoured in this matchup? I would say Ortiz is a technically better boxer, but Ennis is quicker on his feet, more dynamic, so that can level the playing field in terms of technical ability. What I think it may simply come down to is durability. Based on the Lima fight in this new division, Boots is hitting harder than he ever has. Boots' defense isn't the best, we've seen him cracked several times, but we've never really seen him hurt. He's taken some clean counters right on the chin and he's just taken them and kept going. Unlike Ortiz, who does have excellent recovery, very, very good recovery, but if Boots gets him with a counter like Boachuk and Kavaliauskas did, and Boots begins to smell blood, he's not going to stop until Ortiz is on the ground. And I don't think Ortiz is as much of a counterpuncher as he should be in order to deal with that sort of thing. There's a very short window between Boots' opponents being fine and then being on the floor. So my official pick is Boots by competitive decision. I think Ortiz will be ahead in the first few rounds with the jab, with his pressure, but I think Boots will be looking for counters the entire time. He'll eventually find one, put Ortiz down. Ortiz has enough heart to survive, but the knockdown itself and similar moments further on in the fight make Ortiz unable to win on the scorecards. And that's going to do it for the video. Like and subscribe, leave a comment. Goodbye.